Hi everyone. Welcome to Facebook Ads Best Practices in 2021. I am Jen from Payoneer. I'm the Senior Marketing Manager for SEA or Southeast Asia. This webinar is brought to you by Payoneer. Thank you for spending your time to learn with us today. So Payoneer, who is Payoneer? We are the world's go-to partner for digital commerce everywhere. From borderless payments to boundless growth, Payoneer promises any business in any market the technology, connections, and confidence to participate and flourish in the new global economy. So, powering growth for customers ranging from aspiring entrepreneurs to the world's leading digital brands like Airbnb, Google, Amazon, or Upwork, Payoneer offers a universe of opportunities open to you. So aside from payments, we also provide tons of content to our customers from blogs, ebooks to webinars like this and pre-pandemic offline events. So if you want to be kept in the loop for our marketing activities, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You may also visit our blog site and resource center. So for our webinar today, we would just like to remind you that if you have questions, please put it in the Q&A box. You may find it in the one of the icons below. And then yeah, so I think that's it. I would like to introduce to you our speaker today. We have Ken Costales. Hi, Ken. Ken is the founder and lead consultant of Monolith Growth Consulting. It's a paid search and social marketing agency that helps Shopify stores and lead generation businesses around the world grow their revenue and ROI. So Ken is a 2019 honoree listed in Forbes 30 under 30 Asia for marketing and advertising. Which year was this, Ken? Let us know later. But yeah, what sets Ken's agency apart is that they build fully paid ad funnels for their clients. They specialize in customizing the landing pages and emails to maximize conversions. They build custom dashboards where clients get to see all sorts of data like customer lifetime value, frequency of purchase, and basket analysis to maximize retention. Before starting his own marketing agency, Ken worked as a brand operations manager for Procter and Gamble and has managed multi-million dollar businesses in Asia like Olay and Head and Shoulders. So without further ado, I will turn you guys over to Ken, our speaker today.
Thank you, Jen. So I will now share my screen. Um, this one. Okay, awesome. So just to confirm, Jen, can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, Ken.
Got it. Okay, awesome. Okay, so for today, I'm going to go through Facebook ads best practices in 2021. And in terms of the outcomes or in terms of the cases and the type of brands that these ideas are going to work for, I would say that the ideas here apply for both small brands and also fast scaling slash medium-sized brands. So I'll just share some three quick case studies where we have applied these ideas towards. So one case that we have is a brand called Cotopaxi. So it's based in the United States. It's a competitor to brands such as North Face and other similar outdoor focused brands. But then again, going back to the slide here. So again, the key point that I wanted to share was in terms of the ideas that I'm going to present today. So these are proven ideas in a sense that these are ideas that I have tested across various types of clients. So right now I'm sharing a brand in the outdoor e-commerce space, but we have also tested and applied these ideas as well in other industries or other, I would say, verticals rather, such as lead generation. We've also applied the concepts as well in B2B. We've applied it as well in other types of e-commerce businesses. So right now you see an outdoor e-commerce brand. We've also applied it as well for a hair regrowth brand and also for a beauty brand as well. So all of these brands, I would say for the second and third brand, so I showed Medicare, which is a Philippine brand, and also S-Lite. So just right at home in within Southeast Asia. So these couple of brands, for instance, started right in the middle of pandemic. So we partnered with them around early 2020 or mid 2019. So this is a bit slightly before the pandemic, but you'll see like the small dip at the start of the pandemic. So at least in the Philippines, our lockdown or circuit breaker, so the term depends on which country that you're from. So our circuit breaker or our lockdown started at March 2020, and you'll see like a slight dip here, and you will see that the red line rather disappeared because we stopped spending for the meantime. But once confidence came back, we started scaling up the spend and also the revenue and ROAS as well. And same is true as well for this other brand as well, which is Medicare. So we started our partnership with them on September 2020. And again, the ideas I'm going to share today are proven ideas and are proven to help improve the sales and ROI for such clients. And same is true as well, even for an international brand or foreign brand such as Cotopaxi, which is based in the US. And from for the past 1 to 2 years, we have helped them scale both their revenue and also improve what's called CPR. So CPR is another form, or it's another way really of calculating ROAS. So it's cost as a percentage of revenue. So it's basically inverting your ROAS. So let's say, for example, your ROAS or ROI is 10 to 1, meaning for every dollar that you spend, $1 you get $10 back. CPR is essentially the inverse of that, which is out of so what you get by inverting it is 1/10, which is 10%. And you will see that the CPR has improved over time once we started partnering with them. Okay, but that's what I really wanted to share, wherein it doesn't matter too much what type of industry that you're from. I would say that the things that I'm going to share to folks today have worked at least for these types of verticals and these types of brands. And later on, and actually we can like issue the poll. I was also very curious as well that for our participants, I was very, very curious which industry you guys are from. So just wait for Jen to issue that poll. But I also wanted to try to personalize the conversation that we're gonna have today as well. So while majority of the content today is on e-commerce and to some degree services as well, I wanted to personalize it a bit. And in case you are from the real estate industry or the consumer technology industry or F&B industry, I can at least insert a few other case studies or ideas that you can apply in your case as well. Okay, so I'll just wait for the poll to finish, and then we'll see how it goes from there.
So we have 56% of the participants has answered.
Mm-hmm.
So mostly they're from e-commerce.
Awesome. Okay, perfect.
All right. Maybe we can wait for 10 more seconds. That's a
Mm-hmm.
lot, like a minute. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna end the poll now. So we have e-commerce and services as the top industries.
Excellent.
Thank
Okay, so perfect. Because I think for today, majority of the content is really on the e-commerce side. But again, if you are not part of the e-commerce industry, if you fall under consumer technology or SaaS, and if you have a very specific question related to your industry, please feel free to ask me right at the chat, and I'll try my best to answer it. But overall, in terms of the ideas I'm going to share today, a lot of it is transferable as well to other industries. So yep. So awesome. Okay, so again, just to kind of help qualify better who this presentation is primarily designed for, at least on a case study standpoint. This is primarily for brand owners and marketing managers who are earning at least $10,000 a month of revenue in either e-commerce or services companies. So in other words, you should have achieved traction in your organization or in your brand in the past 6 to 12 months. Okay, so traction is important because if you start scaling up in terms of ads for your brand without achieving a certain baseline of traction, then the con or the cost that you might need to take is that you might be wasting money in terms of ad spend, because the core job that you need to do at that point is to first ensure that it is a product or service that people really want. Okay, so I would say it's on the intermediate side of things. So when it comes to ad spend, like before you start scaling up your ads, make sure that there's traction definitely in your organization. And I know that in the past 12 to 18 months, brands have also pivoted as well to new products or services. So if you are in that space and you are experiencing a bit of a plateau in terms of your growth, this will also help you as well. Okay, so And in terms of, just to help qualify better as well, because I think this is more on the ethical side of my teaching, which is before you start scaling up in terms of ad spend, make sure that you have sufficient cash balance in the bank. Because I think given the Delta variant, given all of the new other variants that are coming up in the next few months, I think the proper mindset at the start is to ensure that your finances and your cash flow is in order, or your cash balance is in order. So normally, what I would advise is that you want to make sure that versus your monthly fixed costs, your cash balance should be at least 3x to 6x of that. And you want to make sure that debt is less than 25% of your cash, right? So it's just making sure that you are first in a safe space before you can start going aggressive in terms of advertising. Okay, so make sure that you play defense first. In other words, play defense in terms of your finances. And once you have that foundation set in place, then you can go more aggressive in terms of advertising and revenue. Okay, so that's just like a quick disclaimer, just so folks here won't take too much of a risk. Okay. Um, and that said, if you stick at the end, I will be sharing some gifts as well to everyone. So please stick around and watch out for that. That said, in terms of the key idea, or rather the key concept to really learn today, is to learn about three things about the Facebook algorithm, which is the concept of signal, the concept of liquidity, and the concept of motion. So I'm going to dive deep into these concepts later on in the presentation. And once you're able to utilize and maximize that across all of your brands, and I will share examples later, you will be getting improved ROI and revenue for your brand. Now, the challenge here is that this knowledge is not fully distributed publicly, or there's a lot of conflicting information. There are folks who are, let's say, for example, running their own consulting companies or freelance companies that might share different information as compared to this. But what I'm going to share to you today is information that is shared with me in my privileged position as a Facebook marketing partner. So these concepts, signal, liquidity, and motion, are not made up. So this is coming from Facebook themselves, and I will forward this information to you. But that said, it's not fully, and it's not just conceptual. I will be sharing some case studies and examples so that you can apply it in your own case as well. Okay, but if you're to remember three things, it's definitely signal, liquidity, and motion. And I won't go through this because Jen has kind of gone through some of this background already earlier. But overall, we've been doing this for about 5 years, and thankfully, we and I have been honored recently by various publications in the Asia region for our work across different clients. Now, in terms of the problems that we will look to solve today, I will solve these four problems. One is that, okay, our performance is good, but we're not able to scale up further. Some folks use very, very granular targeting and placements to find pockets of efficiency, like just to try to improve revenue. Maybe you are in a position where the results are volatile. Maybe on August, for example, of this year, you got $10 cost per purchase. And then on July, you got $15. And then this month, you're getting, let's say, $25. So you might be experiencing some volatility in your campaigns right now, or it was just too costly for you and you just had to turn it off. So I will look to solve each and every one of these problems in the presentation today. Okay, so now in terms of, and I'm just going to skip a few slides here just to kind of drive home the key point. But in terms of what is holding people back when it comes to digital advertising, what I've noticed is that a lot of the habits right now are actually drawn from, habits that are learned from doing TV advertising, using radio advertising, or doing traditional advertising in general, wherein you only set one or two audiences and then you're done with it. You just don't optimize it. You don't check on it. You tweak the copy or tweak the advertising. So just set and forget type of mode. Maybe you might be in a situation wherein you got the habits from the print advertising days, which is you're not targeting the right people. Maybe you might be expecting immediate results and modifying the audience settings too often, right? So for the first one, you're not modifying it sufficiently. And this is modifying it too much, right? So, and each person and each brand has their own flavor of the problem. And sometimes you might be giving up too early. So I will share the specific points on when you can modify, and when to wait and when to optimize and what to watch out for as you start optimizing your ads. And that's like the old way in terms of approaching it. And the key thing I'm gonna share with everyone later on is to how to leverage or how to have the digital marketer's mindset and how you can leverage machine learning. And this sounds a bit intimidating, but I will share some practical tips on how you can do that, and how the Facebook algorithm works, really. So how you can use that and actually apply the concepts not just for Facebook overall, but you can also apply the same concepts actually for Google, for Pinterest, for TikTok, and many other digital platforms out there that also leverage machine learning. Okay, so I will share some key fundamental concepts actually that will help you apply the digital marketer's mindset across the different channels. Now, the core difference really between traditional advertising and digital marketing is the presence of an algorithm that automates the process of bidding for slots. So therefore, when it comes to really maximizing the Facebook algorithm overall, or you need to know how it works and how to push the buttons overall. Now, note that it's not a black box. It's not something that you don't have control over. It's not as if you just turn it on and then you just leave Facebook and just give your control away to Facebook wishes in terms of how they optimize it, but you actually have full control over it. And I'm going to teach you how shortly. So I'll just go straight to this framework. So this is how the Facebook machine algorithm works. Okay, so lots of bubbles and concepts here, but I'll keep it really simple for everyone, right? So in terms of any algorithm, any model, any machine learning mumbo jumbo type of stuff, there are two things really, right? So there is input and there's output, right? So you do something and you get something back, right? So it's input and output. Now, when it comes to the digital advertising space or advertising space overall, so ignore the two bubbles in the middle first and just focus on this part and the latter part, right? So in any advertising, whether it is traditional, whether it is digital or whichever, it starts with a bid, right? So you bid for a billboard, for example. Let's say you bid it for, let's say, $100,000. Maybe that's too much, but let's say $100,000, just to give an example. And if someone bids higher, then you lose essentially, right? So it's a bidding, there's a bidding process. So someone will bid, hey, I want to pay $100,000 for this billboard, and this other person wants to bid $200,000, right? So there's a bidding process that starts, and then there is a value that is derived by the user. Value meaning, okay, I see this billboard, it is useful for me. I see a product that I like, therefore I want to buy it, right? So there's like value at the end. Now, what the algorithms have added to the picture is that apart from the bid and apart from the user value at the end of the day, there's also what's called an estimated, let's start with the user value, sorry. So let's start with the user value. So there is also a computation, in other words, of user value. And this sounds like a big word, but what this essentially means is that Facebook or Google or whichever platform out there, they look at your targeting and they look at your ads. So if, for example, you have set up an ad wherein you sell diapers and you target men who are 16 years old, it's not going to work, right? So Facebook can see that, hey, you have diaper ads, you targeted 16-year-old males, it's not going to work. It's not giving the user any value, right? And the way Facebook detects on whether or not you are providing user value is based upon how many clicks you're generating and how many purchases that happen at the end of it. So Facebook can see, okay, we've given this person a whole bunch of reach, a whole bunch of views for their ad. It has generated, let's say, 1,000 clicks and maybe 100 purchases, and it looks like it is valuable for the audience. Therefore, our user value score for this ad is high because they are properly targeting, let's say, women who have a child aged 1 year old and has like brands such as Pampers, Huggies, Mami Poco, etc. And if Facebook has seen that, then they give you a high user value, right? So apart from having a good bid, this is also important. And here, the third part, this is essentially an estimation of how valuable you are as a brand based on historical information. So let's say, for example, you are using an account, let's say a brand that has been doing some good work in the past 5 years when it comes to creating viral posts. You've been attracting a lot of people, liking and engaging with your brand. Facebook knows that. So Facebook will actually take into account the good work that you've done in your Facebook page, on your Instagram page, and it actually gives you a better ranking. Because at the end of it, right, when you think about advertising, like advertisers are ranked. So there is a rank one advertiser, rank two advertiser, rank three advertiser, and the top ranked ones are based upon historical performance, like how much user value that they're generating. Are they generating lots of value in terms of the content? Are they generating lots of value in terms of the advice that they give? For example, like there's a lot of engagements, there's a lot of likes, right? So you're given points for that initially. And if you've done that consistently for the past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you have a high estimated action rate. And therefore you are at the first in the queue, right? So if you're a new brand, you're at the back of the queue because Facebook doesn't know you at all. You're not proven yet. But the more historical performance that you've had, then you get priority slots. And you get priority slot for the best customers who are most likely to provide value to the brand, right? Because at the end of the day, what Facebook wants at the end of the day, like what total value means is we want people to scroll, we want people to click, we want people to engage, we want people to enjoy the Facebook platform, right? So if you start advertising, let's say, again, diapers to 16-year-old males, then it's not going to work. Then you're going to be at the back of the queue. Or if you're advertising ads which are not compliant to the policy, you'll always be at the back of the queue and your ad account might be banned, right? So comply to the policy, give lots of value, and the more value that you provide for the users in Facebook, the more you get them to scroll, the more you get them to stick more to the Facebook platform, then the more valuable you are as a brand in the algorithm's eyes, right? So what is that? So what can we conclude from this framework? In other words, again, input, output. What you want to do is that you want to provide as many quality inputs as much as possible. So how do we do that? Now, the way that we can provide quality inputs to Facebook is using this three-part framework. So this is straight from Facebook slides. So there are three principles to it. There is signal, there is liquidity, and then there's creative. Again, these are like kind of like heavy concepts or terms except for creative, but I'm going to break it down for everyone. So let's dive deeper into it. Now, specifically, there are 5 tips that I'm going to share with you that's related to signals, liquidity, and creative. So let's start with the first one. So the first one is related to signal. Okay, so when we say signal, what it means is that you want to give data to Facebook. Okay, you want to give them quality input data. You want to give them information on, okay, this is what a good user is based on my definition. So for example, and I'll share screenshots later on from our other clients, but one tip that I can give you guys is that you want to use what's called a stacked audience. And what I mean by that is instead of targeting a very generic interest, let's say, like, for example, basketball, you want to find what is likely to be a very engaged user. Because if you just target basketball, for example, who might you target if you, or who might you reach if you target someone who has liked basketball overall? You'll target anyone and everyone. You will target the casual viewer. You'll target someone who just knows Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant and no one else, right? So just casual people who might not be potential buyers for your hypothetical basketball apparel brand here, right? So instead, you want to find niche interests. So let's say, for example, not so known players like Gordon Hayward, Andre Drummond, Tim Hardaway, etc. Like these are these are good players, but not as well known as Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, for example. And this is an indicator that if someone has like the Gordon Hayward page and the Andre Drummond page and the Tim Hardaway page, then it is likelier for them to be potential customers of your basketball apparel brand, right? And what you want to do is that you want to stack them up. What you will notice, and usual pushback that I get is, hey Ken, if I target Gordon Hayward, for example, I only get 10,000 reach, or I can target 1,000 people, right? And that is true, and that is likely to be correct. But what I'm saying here is that you want to collect all of these small interests and you want to stack them up, because what you want is a highly qualified base of users. And instead of just targeting basketball overall, you want to target these micro interests and then combine them together. It takes a bit of extra work, but there are tools for you to help make the research process a bit better. So let me just enter a few things in chat. So I think one website which is interesting is this one. So it's interestexplorer.io. So that is a good way for you to do research for your audience. And you can also use audience insights in the Facebook Business Manager. So both tools have been beneficial, I would say, when it comes to helping us find these very niche interests, especially interestexplorer.io, because you can find interests that are only, let's say, 1,000 people, 2,000 people, but these are very specific interests that indicate to us that, hey, these are brands which are very, very likely to buy. Okay, so that is like one example of providing a good signal to Facebook, which is stacked audiences. And here's one example. So this example is for a very, very niche brand or a niche product. So it's essentially a hat or a beanie, but instead of like something that you put at the top, it's something that you put as a beard. So the brand is called Beardhead. And the way that we have targeted this, for example, is that we try to target specific, blog posts or not blog posts, but specific websites that would indicate that this is a person who likes to joke around, likes to do gags and all that. So we target some meme pages, for example, let's say College Humor, Doge, 4chan, etc. And we would either stack it or we would target it independently. So this is one quick example of a stacked audience. And here's another one if you are in the consumer services space. So this is for a chiropractor company. And what we've done for this particular brand is we targeted specific, I would say, also websites or specific like techniques. So you can see here that there's my scoliosis story. So that's super niche. But based on what we've seen, it has worked very well for us. Now, note that the stacked audience here have been built over time. So normally the way that we would approach it is we would start with like one or two interests. So let's say, for example, we would start with just my scoliosis story. And as we get proof that, hey, this interest has been working for us, then we start adding some more. And then we then compare the results versus the past. So if, for example, we start with my scoliosis story and then we add chiropractic treatment techniques, and we've seen an improvement in terms of lead quantity in this brand's particular case, then we continue it. But if it did not work, then we take it out, right? So you're trying to learn from these small interests, checking the results if it's improving or not, and then you build on top of it later on. So this is another example of giving specific and focused data to Facebook. So that is the first tip that I can share with you, which is stack audiences. The second tip that I will share with you today is the concept of also uploading specific customer data to Facebook. And there are a variety of ways that you can do that. There are certain partnerships that Facebook has when it comes to data. So if, for example, you partner with StoreHub, for example, I know StoreHub is quite popular, I think, in Malaysia, Singapore, and in Philippines, if I'm not mistaken. So you can actually integrate your StoreHub data to Facebook. So whenever someone buys from your retail store, for example, with this particular name, email, and address, then what's going to happen is that it's going to upload that data to Facebook. And what it does is that it does a matching process. And what I mean by that is once you are able to provide email data to Facebook, it can match, let's say, for example, ken.costales@gmail.com. It's going to match it with a particular Facebook profile, right? So Facebook is able to detect that for us. And it doesn't just stop with that, like with the POS systems. There are also existing integrations as well with email. So if you're using a software such as Klaviyo, such as MailChimp, and many other email platforms out there, you can also integrate that as well to Facebook. You can also partner with a freelancer, for example, to make sure that all of the events on the website are properly triggered. So purchase events, add to cart events, and more. Now, there might be a situation or there might be a question where you might ask, okay, how about for iOS 14 or iOS 14.5? What do we do with that? So in terms of how to handle that, there is something that is called server-side tracking. Now, this can get a bit technical, but overall, what that means is that instead of tracking using a third-party tracking tool such as data.facebook.com, like using their pixel, what server-side tracking means is that you implement your own pixel or you implement your own tracking code. And that actually subverts, or that actually goes around the limitations that these browsers might have on you. Because the concept here is most browsers, and in Google Chrome in 2023, they will stop cookie tracking altogether. But for most browsers, they actually don't allow third-party tracking. And when I say most browsers right now, I'm talking about Safari, I'm talking about Firefox, I'm talking about Opera. So these other browsers, they actually don't use cookie tracking anymore. So just like rejected outright, especially if it's a third-party tracker in a known database. So the best practice right now is, if you want to be very sure that your data gets passed to the platforms, you have to create your own tracking pixel. So it's quite the topic, but if you were to Google it or search for it online, you can search for the term server-side tracking to learn a bit more. But if I were to kind of share something here. So in Google Tag Manager, so you can so you can search for that particular phrase, server-side tracking in Google Tag Manager. It's going to teach you how to essentially create your own tracking code, so that you can go around the browser limitations that are existing right now. Okay. But that's just like one advanced example. But overall, the key point that I wanted to drive here is to make sure that you upload all of the data that you have to Facebook and make sure it's broken down. So you have data for your customers, you have data for specific types of customers. So if, for example, you are a retail organization, meaning you have and sell a wide variety of products. Let's say, for example, you sell bags, you sell apparel, you sell bags for women, you sell bags for men, etc. You want that all segmented down, and then you want to upload those specific segments to Facebook and then target them separately. Okay, and on top of that, you can also use what is called offline conversions, because there are some situations wherein, hey, Ken, I have a database of customers, but they are not from a point of sale system or CRM system that natively integrates with Facebook. Now, if you are in that zone, what you can do at the very least is that you can go to business.facebook.com or your business manager, go to events manager, connect a data source, and then from there, you can connect your offline data through this offline feature right here. Um, what it requires is either an email or a phone number. So both are valid for Facebook. So it's either or. So as long as you have that data, you should be able to upload your offline data to Facebook. And as a result of that, you then give Facebook better data as well, right? So if I were to, yeah, so just to share another example before I make a conclusion, what you can also do is that you can also create what's called a custom audience. So you can use the purchase data from your pixel. So assuming that you're able to install the pixels right at your website, you want to make sure as well that you create a what's called a lookalike audience. And it means what it sounds, which is it takes your, let's say, for example, database of 1,000 customers, and it then looks at the features and the pages that this 1,000 people have liked. So if they like, let's say, for example, a certain football team, then they're also going to find people who have like similar pages, right? So I think the more data that you have of this, the better. And it doesn't have to be limited to this. You can also base it off your offline database, right? So offline database or your CRM or your point of sale system data. There's also a third aspect which I have to mention as well, which is if you are also involved in Lazada, in Shopee, in Sephora, and in Food Panda, you can also actually get data that is generated by them. And what I mean by that is you can actually access the purchase data, or the people who have purchased rather, from your Lazada store, from your Shopee store, from your Sephora segment or Sephora brand. You can also track it as well from Food Panda. And the key thing that you want to search for is what's called retail partners in SEA Facebook. So and I'll just type this correctly. So retail partner directory Facebook. So you want to search for that keyword in Google or in whichever search engine that you use. And what you're gonna find is a web page that actually filters who are the available partners that you can get data from within the Facebook ecosystem. So you can actually get the data or get access to the purchase data from Lazada, from Shopee, from from Sephora and from Foodpanda as well. At least those are the four main brands that are available. There's actually much more. It really depends per country, but you will see that Facebook has actually done the work in terms of partnering with other platforms so that you can also leverage your data as well, right? So as you can see overall, I think most likely that if you're using WooCommerce or if you're using Shopify, for example, you might have this down already, like getting tracking purchase events, tracking add to cart events, etc. But I think what is missing for some folks is integrating their CRM data, making sure that it's segmented. What is the type of customer? Are they an apparel customer? You also want to track as well that, okay, given this email, they have viewed this particular product, but they have not bought yet, right? So you want that granular level of segmentation in order for you to really maximize what Facebook can give you. And there's also another concept as well, which might be beneficial for people, but there is a concept that's called RFM segment. So it's another 2-hour webinar in itself, but I encourage people to also do research on that as well. But it is a method that teaches you how to segment your customer database well in order for you to find who might be your best customers. And by uploading these specific segments into the Facebook platform, you'll be able to find better customers for specific types of products at a specific time. So RFM stands for recency, frequency, and monetization. So definitely check that out as well, as supplementary reading and research on top of the presentation I'm going to share today. Okay, so but the core idea really is figure out a way to segment your CRM audience and upload them to Facebook as much as possible, because the more custom audiences that you have, the more effective your advertising is going to be. And in other words, the better the signals that you provide to Facebook as well. So that is like recommendation number 2. This is recommendation number 3, which is on the creative side, which is called using or leveraging what's called motion heavy creatives. And this is important because, again, going back to the concepts or the concept or framework that I shared earlier, that just flip back to that previous slide, which is this particular framework. The question that you need to ask yourself is, apart from giving Facebook some good data, like how to find relevant people for your brand, that's what signals are for, right? So you upload the right CRM data, the right segments to Facebook so they know who to target, right? So they don't target the wrong type of audience for your ad. The other part is, how do you create solid creatives that make people, the concept is thumb stopping creatives, because at the end of the day, going back to what Facebook wants from us, what Facebook wants or what value means for them is people stay on the Facebook platform, they watch the videos, and they engage on the platform itself. And how do you do that? You do that by creating what's called motion heavy creatives. And it can mean like a 1-minute video, for example, that is educational. It can also mean a 10-seconder video that just goes through the key benefits. But the idea here and what they have found, or what Facebook incentivizes overall, is anything that shows motion. Okay, so these are some general principles that Facebook has shared. But what I would say is the most important or the most helpful is actually the one at the bottom, because I found that some brands still use the horizontal orientation type of creative. And the problem with that is that it gets deprioritized in the queue again, right? So using the queue concept, if you want to be a bit more ahead of the queue, you want to create creatives which are mobile first. Okay, so what does mobile first mean? It means either square or Instagram story formats. You want them long or you want them square. So if you were to get started with what is a good mobile first creative, you want to start with this, the specs. I think the next low hanging fruit is creating something that captures their attention. And I will share examples later on how you can capture attention, but it doesn't have to be too complex. So you want to think of it like, let's say, for example, like a PowerPoint slide at least. So it doesn't have to be like fancy creatives with fancy production. It can be just like moving text, like wobbling text. And that is qualified already as a video which has motion, right? Because what the objective that you're trying to achieve here is that when people scroll, they stop when you see your ad because of the fact that it moves. And any movement in any ad, even if it's text, even if it's something simple such as or a picture that's wobbling, that is enough to capture people's attention to make them stop, right? Because once people stop, Facebook actually knows when people stop. So you have to think of it in that way. So maybe some folks here might think in terms of, oh, it needs to be a well-produced type of thing. We need to invest like thousands of dollars just to make this motion thing work. But that is actually not something that Facebook looks at. What Facebook looks at literally is, and you want to think like a computer almost, like what does a computer or what are the inputs that a computer will sense? Okay, the computer will know if a person has stopped on the ad. The computer will know how many seconds did the person watch the video. The computer will know if a person's thumb stopped, right? So it is as simple as that. It could be any type of creative, but what Facebook cares about is, do people stop? Are people paying attention, and are they watching, right? So these are like some quick principles. So make it stand out, use quick or bold animation, and choose attention stopping thumbnails. So I would say the bottom, the specs, and the capture attention part is the most important. Um, the light with sound on, I would say, and don't tell Facebook. I would say it's not as important based on my experience. So based on my experience, I would say 80% or more of the results are driven by the specs and the capturing attention. I think the light with sound on, and I feel most of the small business owners here, it's a lot of work because you have to like type all of the text or all of the statements that the person has said. That's okay. It will help give you that extra, let's say, 1 or 2 cents in terms of CPA improvement. So if you're a big brand where 1 or 2 cents in terms of CPA matters a lot, then definitely do this. But for smaller brands, I would say you get 80/20 or good enough results by focusing on these two parts. And also the lengthened message as well. So those are like some conceptual examples of motion heavy creatives. And there are various software that will allow you to do that without the use of a freelancer or someone external. So I think the industry at large or overall has developed a wide range of applications that make it easy for people to create mobile optimized content. So one good example is Adobe Spark, and another example is VideoShop. So you can leverage these platforms to make custom creatives for you. Now, to if you want to also, let's say, be more efficient when it comes to creating multiple formats. So let's say, for example, you don't want to spend too much time in terms of, I have to make a 1x1 or 1:1 video and 9:16 video. I have to spend all the time. There's actually a way for you to automate that process. So there are two softwares that I can share with you that can help automate that. So one is called Banner Snack. Um, Once you search for it, you might see a different brand name. I actually forgot the new brand name for some reason. But you can search for Banner Snack. And from the first link, you will see that they have what's called it's like an auto adjustment feature, wherein if you just input like one format, let's say 1x1, you put text, you put pictures, you put a button, it automatically creates new formats for you. So that's actually available within Banner Snack. And I think it's also available as well in Canva Professional, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a paid version of Canva. They also have a feature there which also allows you to automatically create multiple formats. I think Banner Snack is more efficient because it does that automatically. I think for Canva Professional, it's just primarily format. Yes, and you still have to do a bit of manual work to get that done. Okay, so that's just a couple of software that I can recommend to you all in terms of what you can use to automate the process of creating different formats. Now I'm going to share some quick examples of how of what are good examples of motion heavy creatives which have worked for our clients. So I will briefly unshare my screen, and then I will share a YouTube video shortly, just to provide some examples for everyone. So in terms of the sequence, it's going to go from complex to simple. So I think the initial videos that we're going to see is more well produced. But as we move along, I will share with you, the different types, the different levels of complexity that you can use. So I'll just hit play briefly. Okay, so I think everyone can hear rather the audio. So I'll
Yes.
start with the first ad. Okay. Okay, so I think if I were to give another tip, actually, so apart from the idea of using motion heavy creative, so I think for that, so we use like a video that they've had in store already pre-pandemic. But if I were to share one more tip actually to everyone, I think another tip, especially during this pandemic type of period, there's actually a certain type of copy or angle that works better than pre-pandemic. Because if you think about it, in a recessionary period, which is something that most countries are undergoing right now, what's happening in a recessionary period is that people are now prioritizing their budget based upon which brand is giving them the most value. And what I mean by this is that when you are sharing or when you're writing down your copy, you want to focus on specific features or technologies which your competitors don't offer. Okay, so you will see earlier that we were talking about various types of features, and you will see that we kind of rotated or rather recycled across those different differentiating features, I would say. So when you write your copy overall, don't focus on benefits that can be solved for by other brands, but instead you want to solve for, or rather you want to communicate benefits that only your brand or only a few brands can solve. So if I were to share like a quick tip in terms of copywriting, that's that. Let's look at the next video. So that was a highly produced video. So I'll show simpler ones as we proceed. Okay, so that's another example. It's a simpler example. And as you will notice, we essentially just used a plain background and we cycled through the different product shots. And if I were to give a tip here, so if you are doing it yourself right now, if you're DIYing your creatives, you wanna switch the slides based on the beat. So when there's like a change in beat or when there's like a certain like, drop in beat, that's when you switch the slides, quote unquote slides. So, or frames rather, to use a more proper term. So that is a simpler example versus the other one. So if you don't have a ready-made video as part of your pool of creatives, you can use that process. And there's plenty of royalty-free music that you can use as well for your creative. So that's another example. Okay, so that was another example, I think similar in concept, and I'll share simpler examples in the next set of videos. Yeah, so that's himself. The next one is a bit simpler. So this one's also video plus some images. Yeah. So this one, just slide to the left, simple animation, and just show the flags there. So again, it can be as simple as that. So nothing fancy, nothing crazy, but the motion of, and actually that's another tip that just popped into my mind. What you will notice is that you want to also be a bit choiceful in terms of which design element that you want to put animation to. So for us, there was some thought in a sense that what we want, because anything that has motion, people's attention will draw to it first. So if you look at it, the first animation was applied on the product because what we want people to pay attention to is the product. And the second thing that we want people to pay attention to is are the differentiators. So a lot of the competing glutathione brands, which is a whitening, fairness enhancement brand. So the other thing that we want to give people attention to is the fact that it is made outside of the country, which is a differentiator versus the competing the competitors that we have, right? So by focusing on that, we're able to help drive market share, in other words, versus these competitors. And then last example, yeah, so this one is also very simple. So this is like the simplest version. So we went from complex to simple. And if you don't want to spend too much time in terms of animation, it can be just like a simple slideshow, such as this. So just flipping through the various slides or frames, and just letting people know how the design looks like. Okay, so those are like some quick examples of what motion heavy creatives should look like. Cool. So let me just hop back to my presentation. Let us go here. Awesome. Okay. So just to verify, Jen, you can see the slides, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So that's like tip number 3. Now, tip number 4. So this is also related to signals. So we talked about signals for the first couple of shifts or concepts. Third tip was more about creatives. Fourth one is about signals as well. Now, what I've noticed is that if the brand already has certain pixel events installed on their website, so they're already tracking purchases, they're already tracking add to carts, they're already tracking page views, etc. Sometimes they over optimize in a sense that if there's like, even if there's no data in the past, they just look to optimize that immediately. And normally what happens is that if, for example, your brand isn't generating at least 50 conversions or 50 conversion events per week for that conversion event, let's say purchases, and let's say you're only getting 20 from Facebook, what happens is that Facebook will struggle to learn what the audience is, because when it comes to the algorithm, it's not just quality inputs, but what also matters are the quantity of inputs. And the guideline is that there needs to be 50 conversions per week. So if you're experiencing volatile results with your campaign, what that signals to you is, apart from the brand not yet exiting the learning phase for that particular ad set, what you want to do is that you want to move from a lower funnel conversion event, such as purchase, and you want to move higher, which has more events. So simple example is, what happens before purchase? What happens before purchase is add to cart. So instead of optimizing for purchases, like if you're experiencing volatile results when it comes to purchase optimization, you want to move higher. So you want to move to add to carts instead, right? So if you're experiencing, different results month on month, to make it more stable, you want to move higher, add to carts. And if that still doesn't work, you want to move higher as again. From there, it's product page view. And if it's still not enough, then you move higher again, which is landing page view. And then hopefully by then, the CPA or cost per conversion will stabilize for you. So that is one good best practice that I can share with you. And if I were okay, I'll share another tip. So if I were to share, hopefully this information is helpful for you guys. So I know I've been sharing like a lot of like tips in between the main tips that I want to share today. But another tip that I wanted to share is I think this is something that most people don't know. But if you are currently optimizing for conversions, if you're using conversions right now as your campaign objective, in the ad set, there's actually a way for you to optimize specifically for ROI. And there's actually a setting that allows you to optimize for cost per conversion. So the default in Facebook is cost per conversion, but if your brand, for example, has a wide variety of products, meaning you have a $200 product, you have a $5 product, you have a $10 product, what normally happens is that Facebook will optimize for the cheaper products. Some of you might have noticed that. If you want your margins to be better, if you want Facebook to focus more on ROI, the way that you do it is that you go to the ad set section, you go to the bid optimization area, and I'll just type that down. Um, so, so you want to go to the bid optimization section, and then from there you can click on value. So let me just type that down to make it easier. So ad set area, and then from ad set area, you go to bid optimization, and then click value. So when you select for value, what Facebook will optimize for that is actually the cost per sorry, the cost per conversion, but rather the ROI. Okay, so that's like a fourth tip I'm gonna share with everyone. And for folks who are still relatively new in terms of let's say advertising overall, like they're already getting traction probably from organic and they're looking to scale that up even further. But at the same time, they don't want to invest too much, because I think a common question that I get is, Ken, how much budget should I apply for my brand? And if I were to give you a formula, this is it. So this is the formula. So you want to define your target CPA or your target cost per conversion. So say, for example, your brand is, or your product rather, it costs $100. And then a sustainable marketing cost for you as a percentage of the price is, let's say, $10. So if you ask, or if you tell me, for example, that, hey, Ken, a sustainable marketing cost for me is $10 versus my product, which is $100, so 10% of your price. So if that is the case, then you use $10 times 50 and times 2. And that's your weekly budget per ad set. And where does this come from, the 50 and the 2? So 50 comes from this, right? So you want to make sure that you're getting at least 50 conversions per week, because if it's too small, then you'll experience volatility. So sometimes you get a lucky day, sometimes you get an unlucky day, right? So you want to make sure that you have 50. And the 2 is more of a buffer, because at the start, what's going to happen is that it's going to start maybe here at the top. So maybe the cost per conversion isn't good as of yet, because Facebook is still learning the audience. And then over time, it's going to learn better as you start spending more, right? So that's like my standard guideline for you guys. So this is a good starting point. And now, if you have a portfolio of products and it's not really per product, but let's say, for example, people buy multiple products from your, let's say, online grocery store, for example, then you want to look at the average check or the average order value, depending on what terminology you use. But it's basically the average basket size. Average basket size, average check, average order value, same terms. So the standard that I found for most brands, especially if it's a brand that you manufacture yourself, it's usually 10%. And for brands which are more of retailers, so if you are importing goods from a manufacturer, then it tends to be a bit lower. So I think if you are in the retail space, it's about 5%. I think for services, businesses, it's also around 5%. For SaaS, it's a bit different. So SaaS, or if you're in the software as a service space, I noticed that there are some software as a service companies in this webinar today. For them, it's usually so replace average check with lifetime value and replace 10% with 30%. So at least for software as a service companies, they have more leeway because it's just a far more efficient business, I would say, when it comes to their cost structure. So those are just some different guidelines when it comes to ensuring that you have a sufficient budget for your brand. And this is just a quick example of how you can do that better. Okay, awesome. So I think I've kind of mentioned this earlier. So I mentioned about collaborative ads, and I think once you start reaching out to Lazada, Shopee, or Foodpanda, because I think for some brands they already have a key account manager assigned to them. So speak with your key account manager, ask them about collaborative ads, and they should give you the process on how to do that. Um, Alternatively, if you don't have that key account manager for various reasons, you can look to ask a preferred agency partner from Facebook, such as ourselves, for example, such as Monolith, and then you can ask us, hey, um, like, can you help us get access to collaborative ads? And then we can help you in that process as well. And the approval process is straightforward. So there will be a request here, and then you will receive it here, and then you approve it, and then you'll get access to that already. Cool. Also, I think another tip that I can share with everyone is that if your brand is, or if your brand has better traction from a particular messenger channel, like Instagram, for example, and it depends per brand, because if, for example, you are in the fashion space, if you are selling, let's say, apparel for women, for example, and it's on the premium side of things, Instagram tends to be a better channel for them. So, and for some brands, usually luxury brands or brands which are more expensive, Messenger tends to work a bit better. What you can do actually is that you can target specifically the Instagram Messenger channel, and you can also see it in the ad set area, and you can technically select, hey, I want to target WhatsApp, or I want to target Instagram direct instead. And what that means is if someone clicks on the ad, they get redirected to WhatsApp, or they get redirected to Instagram direct. So if that is your channel, then you will be able to leverage that as well. Now, overall, in terms of the 5 tips that I've shared with you guys today, so I think bulk of it is really on the signal side, and I think that's really the most important part, signals and creatives. I would say that if you're able to really, really maximize those 2 things, then you would be ahead. Now, there's a third concept as well, which is liquidity. Now, when it comes to liquidity, it's actually very simple. There is a concept that is called the detailed targeting expansion. So detailed targeting expansion, it's literally a checkbox. So you can go to the ad set area, and then if you click on it, and what happens when you click that checkbox within the ad set level is that it automatically finds people who will also likely purchase from your brand. But based on our experience, I think in terms of the order of operations when you want to optimize, because the problem of that feature, and that's why I don't like talk about it that much. The problem of that feature is that for services companies, for SaaS businesses, for any service or lead generation oriented brand for that matter, it does not work. So it does not work at all. It works if you're scaling, but for most brands in those spaces, it does not work as well. But if you're in the e-commerce space, that works okay. And I found that it works best if you have the fundamentals in place, meaning you have the signals down, you have the creatives down, and now you're looking to scale more, then you can use the detailed targeting expansion. And the reason why I hesitate in recommending this is because it turns your audience from, let's say, a 2 million audience to a 15 million audience, right? So it really expands your reach base. So before you get to that stage, make sure you have the stacked audiences right first. You want to make sure that you do motion heavy creatives. You want to make sure you upload your data. You want to make sure that you have sufficient budget, and you want to make sure that you get the conversion events right. So those are like the key fundamentals that you need to check off first before you start scaling hard. There's also one thing I wanted to share, I think. Yeah, but I think, yeah, so I think I might remember it, but it was just another tip that I wanted to share out of the blue. But those are like some key tips that I wanted to share for today. And again, in terms of the results that these ideas have driven for our clients, it has improved ROAS, it has improved revenue as well. across different industries, especially in e-commerce. So the ideas definitely work for us. So I'll just pause a bit and just cover off any questions that the team might have. So maybe I'll pass on the floor, I think, to Jen, who will go
Yes.
through the questions. Mhm.
Yes. Thank you very much, Ken. That was a really helpful, insightful, and productive session. Yes, and we do have a few questions from the audience, and I encourage the audience to write your questions, give more questions to Ken on the Q&A box. So let me read the first question from our audience. This is regarding tracking conversions from your Facebook ads. So would you recommend Facebook Pixel versus using UTMs?
Awesome. Okay, so um, in terms of what I recommend, it's Facebook Pixel because UTM, technically speaking, it does not pass the data to Facebook. So yeah, so I think the only channel that benefits from it is, I would say, Google. So yes, so I think Facebook Pixel is recommended more. Now, if you want to get more value from your UTM parameters, there's actually an extra technical step that you need to take, which is you want to you want you yeah if you want to actually get value from your UTM parameters, you still have to encode it through code. So if you want, let's say, your UTM parameters from your organic traffic, from your Google Ads to also be passed to Facebook, you actually have to apply some custom JavaScript code within your Google Tag Manager. Um, it's a large topic. What I would suggest to help you get started on how to maximize UTM parameters is to Google this, so server-side tracking in Google Tag Manager. And I think a good resource here is Simo Ahava. So, and I think if you are a non-technical person, you might need to partner with a freelancer or partner with an agency such as Monolith to help you out in that process. So I think that is the challenge with that. Mhm.
Okay, thank you, Ken. We have our next question. Would you suggest to boost Facebook posts or creating Facebook ad creatives?
Uh, that's an excellent question. So by default, I would prefer to I would prefer the latter, which is you'd want to create specialized Facebook ad creatives. And the reason there is that ideally for each and every ad set, you'd want to have custom creatives for that particular ad set in order to maximize the probability of sale. So I'll give you an example. So one example is using the basketball e-commerce example that we've had earlier. If you're selling basketball apparel, what you can do is, if let's say, for example, you're selling Gordon Hayward jerseys, you can target Gordon Hayward and then you have a Gordon Hayward jersey as part of your ad, right? So you can actually customize your ads for each and every interest and ad set within Facebook. And that just improves your results tremendously. Yeah, so I think that's a great question. I think that's something that's also key as well to your success. It's more work, but the extra work pays dividends, I would say. Now that's like the default. Now, if for example you have a Facebook post which is performing very well in terms of engagement, in terms of likes, in terms of comments. So if you're a consumer brand and you're achieving that, then it makes sense to do a Facebook. Then it makes sense to do a Facebook boost post. But otherwise, it has to be custom, I would say.
Got it. Okay, that's very
Mhm,
helpful because I yeah, I wanted to follow up on that and ask like when is the right time to do boosting
mhm,
of your Facebook post. So it would be depending it will depend on like the engagement
mhm,
uh organic post, I guess,
mhm.
right?
Yes. Mhm,
No need to always, boost your organic posts, only if
mhm,
needed. All right.
mhm.
Okay, next question. Should we have a question from Andreas. should we take
Mhm.
into account for canceled or return orders since it may affect conversion value?
Excellent question. I would say yes, because we have a client wherein they had 15% return rate, which is huge. And I think it's because they have cash on delivery as part of the logistics options that are available. So the standard usually is like 2 to 5%, and they have 15%. It takes some extra work, but it definitely pays dividends because it helps you avoid such not so ideal customers. And if I were to give you a trick, um, what you can also do is that you can upload the custom audience of like the proper legitimate customers, like people who actually follow through. You upload that to Facebook, and you also upload people who canceled. And what you can do within the ad set is that you can include the awesome customers who follow through, and then you exclude a lookalike of those who are not good customers. So that Facebook can learn that, oh, okay, so this is the lookalike audience, or this is how a not so good return customer might look like. It takes a bit of volume because Facebook does require at least, I think, 500 emails in order for them to learn and generate a lookalike audience. But if you have that number of return orders and return customers, I think it's worth the effort. Great question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Mhm.
We have a follow-up regarding the boosting of Facebook posts from Elfie. I saw it from the chat box.
Mhm.
After we created ads boosted, where can I see how the ads look like?
That's
Like
a great
the
question.
boosted posts, yeah.
Okay, so I think let me just grab a link for you, Elfie. Just give me 1 second. So there's actually a public database because I think you might be referring to someone who's running ads, but you don't have full visibility on it. There's actually a public tool called the Facebook Ads Library. So you can click on that link. So you can also search for it as well, Facebook Ads Library. It's a database for all ads which are running live right now in any country and in any Facebook page. It's actually a transparency initiative from Facebook to catch like political ads, but you can use that if I'm guessing you work with someone right now or a freelancer or someone and you need to monitor the ads. You can actually see how the ads look like live through that platform, and that will also help you look at the different formats. So I believe it also shows how it looks like for Instagram, for and the different placements that are available as well. So great question, Elfie.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ken. We have a question from Nick or Nikki. Do you think it's efficient to run a couple of ads with different ad sets and different audience? Nick is spending almost 1,000 pesos in just a day and a half. So that's about like $20 in
Mm-hmm.
just a day and a half.
Got it. So I would say that so if I were to share with you um, how we would structure it, so the way we structure it is what we call the rule of three. So if you're just starting out, and a good minimum for us is to use the rule of three. And what I mean by that is create three ad sets, and then for each ad set have three different creatives. So we found that that is sufficient for Facebook to learn. If you add too many creatives, we found that Facebook tends to over optimize for like 2 or 3 ads and then ignore 2 other ads. So you can use that rule of three. So I'll just type it down for everyone's benefit. So at a minimum, um, have 3 ad sets and have 3 creatives for each ad set. Yes. So I think that's a good starting point in terms of testing. And over time, as you start getting some data, because you will see, oh, this creative has, let's say, has given me, let's say $5,000, and creative number two has given me $1,000, and then this ad set has given me $7,000. This other ad set has given me $2,000. So from then you can just pause and put more budget on the ones which are working well for you. So great answer. Great question rather.
Mhm. And also great answer, Ken.
Thank you.
We'll take note of that. Yeah. And
Uh-huh.
yeah, I hope like everyone is taking note of the additional tips, those that are
Mhm.
not included in the on the presentation or the slides, because we will be sharing the slides end the recording of this session to all the participants today. So, okay. Still regarding budget, someone asked, what is the recommend? I guess it's this one, right? Just the one you mentioned. What is the recommended
Yes,
daily budget for SMEs, not big brands?
correct.
So
Yes. So
this rule.
yeah,
Mhm.
so you can use this rule to help you derive what is the correct budget. So again, it starts with the price of your average basket size. So let's say, for example, this one, your average check or average order is $500. Then what you can do is do this calculation to find the right weekly budget per ad set for you. So I would say that's a good minimum. Um,
Okay.
yeah. So yep, that's my answer there. Mhm.
Got it. All right. And then we have a question from Boone. If
Mhm.
not seeing conversions, how long should we give before we change creative of ads?
Great question, Bunyong. So my suggestion is, I would say my tip is, actually like if you see 100 clicks, like just a short practical tip. If you see 100 clicks for a particular ad set or ad, and you're not seeing conversions, then you can turn it off. And I use 100 because um, uh, it I mean, there's a long explanation, like statistics-based explanation, but usually you need 100 data points or 100 visits on a particular page. Let's say it's your product page. You get 100 visits, and if it's still zero conversions, then just turn it off and then change it to another one. Now, the Facebook rule will say something like, you have to really wait until the learning phase exits, which I understand for some small brands, it's too long. It will take forever sometimes, especially if you're starting with the small budget that I recommended just now. Another tip that which has worked for our similar for small brands is the 100 clicks rule. So if you see 100 clicks, no sales, turn it off. So that's my guideline for you. Mhm.
Okay. And then we have a question on our chat box from Ace. I really
Uh-huh.
would like to follow the rule of three, but the thing is we have branches in different cities, so up to 13 cities. So we create one ad per city, one ad set per city. We try to include
Mhm.
them all in one ad set, but I think since per city has different audience size, budget is being allocated, or sorry, allotted to the city who has the bigger audience size. How can we structure our ad sets instead?
That's a interesting situation. What I would do there is what I would do there is I would have so I would assign like one ad set per city. So that's a good starting point. But what I would do is I would have different interests for each location or each city. So maybe let's say, for example, if you're selling, just to throw an example, let's say you're selling like healthy meals for dieters and bodybuilders. So maybe for ad set one, you're targeting the weightlifters, and then ad set number two, you're targeting city number two with marathoners, etc. So, but all of them would have common creatives, except maybe for the location name, but three creatives for each, so that you don't have to create multiple ad sets for each city. And as you learn, and let's say, for example, you see that, oh, this city is working really well, and this city is using a particular interest. Let's say, for example, it's using the power lifter interest. Then it's a message for you that, oh, okay, let me try power lifter interest for the other city, and let's see if we get good results from there, right? So that's how I would do it. So you can use the 100 clicks rule to identify when that happens. And if you're working with so you can use the 100 clicks rule to help you in that process on when to actually switch the interests with others.
Mhm. Okay. So I wanted to take this question. I wanted to
Mhm.
bump up this question from Ree.
Sure.
So let's talk about like creatives, I guess. What's your take on dynamic creative?
What's my take on dynamic creative? So I think as compared to like making it from scratch is superior, I would say, in terms of revenue. I think the challenge with dynamic creatives um, is that it looks plain. Because I think if I were to share like one general rule when it comes to advertising, you'd want your creative to be similar to, or it should like mirror what a organic post would look like in Facebook. So in Facebook, you would see pictures of friends, and not so much on the product. The thing with dynamic creative is that since it gets the information from the shop itself, it will show like the product first and foremost, right? Which is good for people who have visited your brand. But if you're targeting people who are strangers to your brand, they don't know you at all, it's a bit off-putting. Like for them, oh, it's a random brand. I haven't heard this brand. Scroll down, right? So what's best practice usually is you want to use an organic looking creative. Let's say there is a person, and human faces in general. That works in Facebook. What works in Twitter, for example, are witty statements. So that works amazingly for Twitter. What works for TikTok are the dancing stuff and the more interactive tips that you've noticed. So if you follow the best practice when it comes to organic creatives in the channel, that's usually a clue na, hey, I should create my creatives in the same manner as well. And then I would say in general, the product is secondary because at the end of the day, it's all about the consumer or the customer. So talk about the pains that your product will solve if you give it to the consumer, talk about the benefits, etc. And then the product, it just appears by then. So yeah. So great
Yes.
question.
Yeah, agree. Thank you for that, Ken. So I wanted to ask this question from Jasreel. What is
mhm.
the best method to scale up? If we can give Jasreel like one do and one don't in scaling up.
Hmm. Um, so so if I were to give one tip in terms of scaling up, that's not in this presentation.
Yes.
What I would say is use automated rules. So what automated rules does, and it's part of the Facebook platform as well. It can use third-party software as well. What you can do as a do is have a rule which automatically turns off ad sets and ads if it does not hit a certain CPA target. So if it's above $10 CPA, for example, and you have 100 clicks, automatically turn it off, right? So I think that is very useful, especially for scaling up businesses because they have a lot of ad sets at a time. We have some clients which has 10 campaigns and then 50 ad sets in total, and then times two or times three ads for each one because they're a retail brand and we have to like promote a bunch of stuff for them. And all have to work because we want inventory to go out, right? So if it arrives at that level of complexity, then you need those automated rules to make it easier for you to scale up. So that is my do. And what is my don't? Whether you are a large brand or a small brand, I think not tweaking your copies, not tweaking your ad sets every 2 to 3 days minimum. I think that's not good practice. You'd want to really optimize your ads just so you can really maximize the money that you get from it. So that's my don't. Mhm,
Okay, thank you, Ken. So we
mhm,
have a question from our audience. If the ideas that the shifts that you
mhm,
presented today, are these also applicable for a startup company? And also, I guess since most of our examples are for retail or
mhm,
products, are
mhm.
these also applicable for services? Or is there like a special tip for a startup, or maybe if you have a special tip for a startup company or a service provider company or business?
Yes. So on that question, so I think the question was, is are the ideas good for a startup company? So if you just literally just launched, I don't recommend it because it what we found is that it takes much longer for the brand to learn if there's no prior purchase data or any prior evidence of sales because your challenge there is really traction. So instead of leveraging paid media in general, leveraging Facebook, Instagram, Google, etc., instead of doing that, you have to do it the old-fashioned traditional way. So talk to your network, share your products with your friends, give samples to your friends. I think if there was something that is slightly paid, but not like ads level, is actually influencer marketing. So what you can do is that you can partner with micro influencers. Micro influencers are defined as influencers who have at least 10,000 followers, but not exceeding 50,000 followers in my definition. So you can partner with those. Usually the rates for partnership for that are either commission based or it's based on per post. So usually the rates, it ranges from $25 up to $200 depending on the size of the followers of the influencer. So you can partner with those people to help you get that initial traction. Because if you go with ads, it's really hard to tell if it's because of an ad problem or if it's a product problem or if it's a copywriting problem on the website. And if you do that small bursts of networking, of posting in Facebook groups, posting in forums online, so do it the manual organic way and posting via the Instagram or Facebook influencers, that will get you to certainty without wasting too much money, right? It's just risky to start spending in ads at such an early stage. I would say validate demand, validate that people like how the copy is written right now, validate that there are definitely customers for this product, and then you scale up. So those are my recommendations for a pure startup brand. Mhm.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Now let's address the question from Sutarho from
Mhm.
Indonesia. So their situation there is Instagram is much more effective on conversions
Mhm.
compared to Facebook, which is more for awareness. Please
Mhm.
elaborate more on how we also could optimize conversion on FB. What is the best practices on FB to increase sales interrelated to ads in Instagram? Maybe we can be specific on the best, because you've mentioned a
Mhm.
lot of best practices already during the
Mhm.
session, but maybe we can specify on how to increase sales interrelated to ads in Instagram.
Okay. Great question. So normally in that situation, what you would do is that, so if you remember the rule of three earlier, so three ad sets and then three creatives for a campaign. What we have done in the past to really know what works for Facebook is really through testing. And what I mean by that is have a rule of three type of structure for and only filter it just for Instagram. So that's like campaign number one, and using the same tested creatives for copies, using the same copies and ad sets rather, but filter just for the Facebook placement. You want to have it separated it out. So one set just using the Facebook placement and another set using just the Instagram placement. Usually based on what we found in the past, the differences are actually not on the ad sets and not on the copies. Based on our experience, for some reason, it is the products. So certain products work really well in Instagram and certain products work really well in Facebook. If I were to just pluck something from my memory, what I do remember is that bags tend to work in Facebook, better CPA there, and then apparel tends to work better in Instagram. So when we did a similar test in the past, that was the insight that we got. It's more product based. I'm not sure why, but that's the numbers that Facebook and Instagram gave us at the time. So maybe that's something that you can apply. But it starts with like really segmenting your campaigns. Facebook campaign only and then Instagram campaign only, but similar ads and similar creatives.
Okay. Thank you, Ken. Just a quick
Sure.
follow-up question about Instagram. Can you run ads to Instagram even if the brand does not have an Instagram account?
Can you
Do you know about
the
this?
yes. So the answer is yes. So you can run ads to Instagram even without an Instagram account. So it is only accessible within the Facebook Ads Manager. So what's gonna happen there is that it's going to like copy the name of your Facebook page and then make a proxy Instagram handle for it. So that will also work. I don't really recommend it. Yeah, I don't really recommend it because going back to the framework earlier, or one main insight, which is you want to give Facebook as many signals as you can. If you have a Instagram page, and any interaction that happens on that Instagram page is actually data for Facebook to learn from. Now, you don't have to maintain the Instagram page. What some brands do is that they just create like one giant creative, and then they split it into 9 sections, and it's just like a quick introduction of their brand, and it's just like a it's they treat it like a brochure, right? Because if you look at Instagram profile, right, on mobile, there are 9 squares there. They just treat
Mhm.
it like a brochure. So just post like a giant picture there, just some key information about the brand. This is where you can get it, etc. Treat it like a brochure. You don't have to maintain it, and that is like sufficient for you to to get started in Instagram. So that's what I would advise instead, because again, every follower, Facebook sees it, and they learn from each and every follower. And you can also retarget Instagram followers within your campaigns as well. Um, so to answer your question, yes, it's possible. But to give Facebook more data, I recommend creating your own Instagram account.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you, Ken. And in relation to signals, one of our attendees asked, in driving signals, you've mentioned that we must provide user value, and this is signaled by clicks and engagements. Do you think
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
okay to create ads optimized for post engagements, or does Facebook value organic content over paid?
Okay, let me just provide the signal by parts and correct post engagement. Got it. Okay. So very interesting question. So the question is, should we optimize ads for engagement? Or does Facebook provide more value on organic content versus paid? So like, can we actually like hack the system in terms of driving more engagement, or is organic better? Based on our observation, the value of engagements on a Facebook post, we noticed that like if you're in the e-commerce space, for example, or even in the services space, I would say you'd want to optimize still for the lowest part of the funnel. And we noticed in the past that paid engagement um, only works if we use it as a retargeting audience, not so much as a way to boost the signal, but really more as a retargeting audience. So it works in that manner. Um, Now, to your question, like, does Facebook value organic more than paid? I would say it values organic content more, based on what you've seen. So I noticed in the past that if there if the Facebook page has been active recently, because we've seen Facebook pages which are active among clients and Facebook pages which are not active among other clients, we just noticed that the one which is more active and therefore has more likes and engagement, they just tend to perform better in terms of eventual leads and sales. When we did the whole post engagement thing via paid ads for someone who wasn't as active, we noticed the results weren't as good. So we kept on recommending to this client that, hey, you need to get someone who will post in behalf of the brand on a more frequent basis. So to answer your question, yes, Facebook does value organic more than paid in terms of engagement.
That's good to know. Thank you, Ken.
Hmm.
So
Sure.
I'll just read three more questions, and maybe we can show our audience like where can they contact you if they have more questions, and
Sure.
their gifts. I think they're waiting for
Mhm.
their gifts also.
Oh my
Last three
God.
questions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Last three questions. So in relation to like how they can contact you, one of our attendees asked, do you provide one-to-one digital marketing training? Because our attendee prefers to learn before outsourcing the ads management. Yeah, do you provide digital marketing training?
So I don't provide one-on-one digital marketing training right now. We do have an online course, but right now the online course is limited to Philippines. So if you're in Philippines and you want to get access to that online course, I can provide you that. It's the same course that we use to teach our employees, actually, the ones that are starting out in the company. So I'll share like a link later, a booking link later. So if you are interested in that, then we can have a conversation about that. Mhm.
Good. Okay. Noted. Okay. We have a question from our attendees for Lazada and Shopee. Is it recommended to
Mhm.
use a landing page to collect their email in exchange of discount voucher so that we can track the performance?
Great question. Super great question. It's actually best practice to do that. Now, the method that we use is slightly different in a sense that, because I think when it comes to Lazada and Shopee, right? If when it comes to Lazada and Shopee, what happens is that if you create an ad, you cannot track landing page views, you cannot track add to carts, you cannot track purchases, right? So unless you have collaborative ads, then you can get purchased. But for most people, they cannot track that. Um, Now, yours is a bit more, I would say, high intent in the sense that you're requesting them to fill up their email and all that. But there's actually like a middle ground in a sense that you don't have to have a form. So what we do for our Lazada and Shopee clients actually is that, yes, we do have that landing page, but what we do there is that there are two buttons. There is Shop at Lazada button and Shop at Shopee button. And what we do is that we implement a pixel event where we know if someone has clicked on the Lazada button or the Shopee button. Because if someone has clicked on the ad and also clicked on the Shopee button or Lazada button, those are good signals to tell Facebook that, hey, next time we want to make sure that you optimize for people who click on the Lazada button for our Lazada ads, and you want to optimize for the Shopee clickers for our Shopee ads. So we actually have that set up to help Facebook learn a bit more. And it goes back to the signals concept, right? Which is you want to figure out a way that if you're selling on a third party platform, have a landing page which this person has recommended, but you don't have to put up a form because most people don't really like that. I think if you want
Mhm.
more volume and more pixel data, I would just apply a pixel on that particular button, and then once people click on it, then it signal to Facebook that, hey, this person actually explored your shop in Lazada. For
Right.
some clients, we actually take it to the next level. So if it's a retailer with different products, we have one client which sells tomato sauce, olive oil, and other products. We have different landing pages for each one. And then we would have a click on the olive oil button that leads to Shopee. We have another event that click on tomato sauce that leads to Lazada. And we use those custom audiences to make Facebook learn more on, hey, this is a tomato sauce customer, or hey, this is a olive oil type of customer. So that's a great question actually. That's actually a good strategy to get better data.
Mhm, mhm. Thank you, Ken. So again, I'm seeing that we still have, a few questions
Yeah,
unanswered,
keep
but
it coming.
I,
Happy to answer.
but I think we can take this final question for now, and
Sure.
yeah, like they can connect
Okay.
with you after the webinar.
Yes.
And guys, you can also rewatch the webinar once we upload it on
Okay.
our YouTube channel. And yeah, we'll be sending the email with the presentation slides and the recording. But there's a question from Elfie. My experiences offer good discounts, ads attract sales, but less discount is not effective. So what would be your advice I mean, with regards to discount or attracting more sales? What can we offer to our potential customers?
Got it. Okay. So my experiences offer good discounts as attract sales, but less discount is not effective. Um, yeah, so I think that's kind of a pain point, definitely, because I think especially during this time, we want to protect our margins. The best practice that we found is do gifts with purchases, and that's usually cheaper on a procurement point of view. So I'll give some quick examples using the supplement brand earlier. So it's a supplement, it's a beauty supplement, so you can think of like collagen and similar other products out there. So what they've done is that apart from or rather, instead of offering the product at, let's say, 25% off, for example, which is too deep for some people, what you can do in lieu of that is to do a gifted purchase. So for them, they tested things such as, oh, if you buy our supplement, then you also get free vitamin C. And that actually turned out to be cheaper than a 5% discount for them. So that's like one thing. Another thing is to offer, let's say, masks, so free mask or free face shield. So any gift that you can provide on top of that, that tends to help. And if your portfolio supports it, what you can also do is to offer bundles. Bundles tend to be quite effective as well, as compared to just straight up discount for a particular product. So those are my two tips for you.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ken.
Got it. So cool. So let me just prepare a few things for folks here. Got it. So let me just share this slide again. Um, yeah. So I think I guess the key thing is how could the next steps look like for everyone, right? Um, so what are the next steps, or what are the various options that you might have? So I think in terms of option one, you can DIY it. There's quite the learning curve. The good news is that there are various resources that are available online that can help you out in the process. So I think one good resource is the Facebook Blueprint, and then there's also Google Academy. So both are good resources for you to start from when it comes to getting some information about this thing. The only technical part that you might need external help on is to partner with a freelancer. But that's only on the pixel and tracking code side of things. And if I were to give you a quick tip, that job shouldn't take more than 1 hour. Okay, so if you want to set a hard budget for the freelancer, then pixels, if I were to give you some info about that, it shouldn't take more than an hour to implement. So you can set that hard cap if you'd like. Second is you can also look to implement these ideas on a service standpoint. So Monolith is like one example, and I think the differentiator for us, one of the differentiators for us, is that we would kind of cover off the importation, we would cover the creatives, and we also have accountability to Facebook, because right now we have some privileges thanks to Facebook in terms of the information, in terms of other perks as well when it comes to cost. So we will lose that, or we will lose those privileges if we don't comply to the standards that they've set out. So I talked about Signal, I talked about liquidity, I talked about motion, etc. There's actually like a scorecard for it for each and every agency. So so we are accountable to that. Now, if you'd like to schedule some time with me just to kind of learn a bit more on how a service program might look like, so I have a form here, not form, but it's a booking form that you can look to schedule with me. So I'm available for the next few days, few working days. So if you want to chat with me, maybe go a bit deeper, then I'm happy to help. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, it has to be a sales. It's not like that. So I'm happy to help. And like I can give more tips to you, if you need it, right? So I'm happy to help in whichever way that I can, because I do understand because of this pandemic there are challenges. So that is like the second thing, which is service. Now, if you're currently based in Philippines, what we also offer, and it might work as well for other countries as well, is that we also have an online course. So you can check out this other link as well. So if you want to learn, it's best for folks who are, I would say, doing things from scratch, still very new when it comes to Facebook marketing and ads in general. But this kind of covers the gamut of Facebook ads and Google ads. Right now, in terms of the price points and all that, it's for Philippines. But I think the button should work if you're outside of the Philippines. But I'm actually planning to have different price points for each and every country. So I think right now it's only limited, frankly, on a Philippine standpoint. But feel free to check it out, and feel free to actually like check out one of the free modules. I think there's one free module which is like 1 hour, right? So I think it's 1 hour of content. I think it's about copywriting. So if you want extra content from me, you want to have 1 more hour with me, there's actually like there's actually a pop-up somewhere that will show, hey, you can you can watch this 1 hour video totally for free, right? So that's a-okay, right? So feel free to enjoy that content as well. I think the topic there is about copywriting. So that's like the online course. Now, in terms of the gifts that we have on the table for everyone, so we do have Facebook vouchers in our privileged position as a Facebook marketing partner. So for for folks that who become clients of ours in the next 3 to 4 weeks, again, historically, conversations do take some time, so there's no like rush whatsoever. So this is valid up until September 30. So if you want to partner up with me and also get free ad credits along the way, feel free to click on this link. So this is a scheduling form. So you'll see like so you'll see this service called OneSub. So you can schedule times to me, learn more about how the program can look like, and then if we do partner up, we're actually offering free $250 worth of ad credits for the first 3 clients. There's actually also a gift as well, another gift, which is we also have like smaller vouchers for that we can offer as well for folks who might not be able to kind of get the service. So, but it's like by selection. But it's worth $50 worth of ad vouchers as well for folks that maybe we had an initial conversation, but maybe it's not the right time right now. So for that, I'm happy to help either way and provide some extra ad vouchers just to kind of help you get started, right? If you're a startup, I think there are folks here who are in the startup phase. If you want that extra boost just to help you out, then I'm more than happy to provide that small ad credits for you guys, right? So it's really just for me to initiate a relationship with you. I'd love to I love to talk about this. I love to, we also have like various webinars that are available online. But that said, I hope this information has been valuable for everyone. Great questions. I haven't received so many questions in such a long time. So I think we've had 20 plus questions, right? So couldn't answer them all. But if you want to kind of table your questions to me in a personal setting, feel free to schedule time with me. There's no bind or anything. It's totally complimentary. I'm happy to talk. I love talking, if you noticed. So feel free to schedule time with me, and I'm more than happy to answer any of your specific questions related to your brand. So yeah.
Thank you, Ken.